Alright, Trekkies and Trekkers, it's time to take a look at the final episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 6, Tears of the Prophets. On Deep Space Nine, the Bajorans are celebrating the Gratitude Festival. In the station's Bajoran temple, Kieran approaches Benjamin Sisko and thanks the emissary of the Prophets for holding the festival on Deep Space Nine, despite the fact that the Dominion War is raging. However, Odo is not very grateful at the moment, as he and Kira have had their first argument. Odo arrested a Vedic for fundraising the promenade, and Kira's angry as the Vedic was collecting for flood victims. Odo tries to explain, but Kira doesn't want to hear it, leaving the constable sure their relationship is over. On a more military note, Captain Sisko was awarded the Christopher Pike Medal of Valor in recognition of his remarkable leadership and meritorious conduct against the enemy, and in particular for acts of personal bravery displayed during the battle to retake Deep Space Nine. The ceremony is followed by a briefing in the wardroom by Admiral Ross. Not that the Romulans have joined the alliance against the Dominion. Starling has decided to go on an offensive war, and they have chosen Captain Sisko to plan the invasion of Cardassia. At about the same time, Quark and Julian Bashir are waiting for Worf and Dax to emerge from their holosuite. When they emerge, Dax tells them that she and Worf have decided to try for a baby, noticing to Bashir's concerns that a Klingon on Trail may not be able to have children. Dax is still hopeful, while Quark and Bashir are left miserable upon realizing that the sliver of chance they had to inject Zia's heart is now completely gone. Quark remarks it was bad enough that she married that Klingon psychopath, but that a baby now means that the marriage is going to last a little longer than expected. Meanwhile, Sisko and Ross are discussing the attack on Cardassia with General Martok, emphasizing the importance of bringing the Romulans aboard. Martok is unhappy about the prospects of working with the Romulans, as he finds them arrogant and untrustworthy. Ross insists that without their help, the Federation has little chance of success. Martok bellows that they will succeed. And then goes on to tell Sisko and Ross that at this time next year, the three of them will drink blood wine in the halls of Cardassian Central Command. Meanwhile, on Cardassia, Wayun and Damar discuss the weak defense of the Chintoka system following the transfer of forces to the Romulan front. While Wayun is worried, Damar is confident due to the recent construction of Cardassian orbital weapon platforms, which, in addition to being fully automated, also have highly effective weapons and defense systems. However, the discussion is interrupted when Gul Dukat arrives requesting a Bajoran artifact that was stolen during the occupation. Zora starting vengeance on Captain Sisko. Dukat says that he doesn't hold Damar responsible for Zial's death, as he believes that Sisko was behind it all to begin with. He says he no longer has a need for conquest and power, and that he in fact exists in a state of complete clarity, which he wishes to share with the universe. Will ridicules Dukat for his petty thirst for revenge, saying that he indeed has changed, from being a self-absorbed egotist to a self-deluded madman. Before Dukat can be removed, however, Damar intercedes on behalf of his old mentor and at his queries. Dukat says that the artifact he is after will make it possible for Dominion reinforcements to come through the wormhole, so they get rid of Sisko and the Federation once and for all. This claim grabs the attention of Wayun. On Deep Space Nine, Sisko and Ross, together with Martok and Worf, try to convince the Romulans about the attack. The Romulans and Klingons exchange insults and bicker with one another, until Sisko reminds them that they are allies. The Romulan senators are not quite convinced that attack on Cardassia would be wise, but the Admiral Starfleet officers argue that in order to achieve lasting victory, they need to hit the Dominion by demolishing their shipyards, their weapons plants, and their cloning facilities, just to force them to retreat deeper and deeper into their own territory until Federation ships can surround their headquarters on Cardassia Prime. It won't be difficult, Sisko admits, but it is the only way to drive the Dominion out of the Alpha Quadrant, a goal the Federation, the Klingons, and the Romulans all share. Meanwhile, Quark and Bashir, still feeling miserable about what Dax just told them, decide to drown their sorrows by going to Holosuite to seek counsel from the wise Vic Fontaine, who serenades them with just about the most appropriate song, Here's to the Losers. At the same time, Benjamin Sisko is having dinner with his son, and since the captain did not overcook the rice, Jake understands that something big is preparing, and he asks his father if he can come along. He wants to write what is happening, but Cisco doesn't want Jake anywhere near the war. In the end, however, acquiesces when he realizes that no matter what he does, he won't keep his son away from the action. He has to pack and get ready. Jake is enthused, but Cisco is worried. As soon as Jake leaves, the prophets contact Cisco and advise against the emissary leaving the station and engaging in this war. They don't tell him why, but they are clear about what they don't want him to do. On the station, Captain Cisco has received information regarding the orbital weapon platforms. It turns out that the Dominion has placed hundreds of them along the Chintoka system, concluding that this must be the place they have to attack first. Fortunately, the Romulan Star Empire has agreed to join the invasion of Cardassia. They decide the attack will happen the next day. After the briefing, Cisco tells Admiral Ross about the vision he had and about the warning he received from the prophets to not join the mission. Ross gives the captain a short shrift about this and reminds him that Starfleet is unhappy with the Starfleet captain being a religious icon and tells him to choose between the two. He's either the emissary or Starfleet captain. He cannot be both. Captain Cisco decides loyalty to Starfleet and agrees to lead the invasion. On Cardassia, Whedon and Demore discuss the planned attack by the Federation and the Romulans when Dukat storms in, celebrating that he has finally acquired the artifact he was talking about. He tells them that after studying Bajoran culture and history over the past few months, he has come to realize that the wormhole is not only the gateway to the Gamma Quadrant, but also the temple of the prophets who protect the Bajoran people. He says they wasted their time fighting the Bajorans. Instead, he should have fought their gods. He then recites an incantation and breaks the artifact, releasing a Pal Wraith that possesses him. The next morning, Kira visits Odo in his office to say goodbye, as she is leaving with the task force the next morning. Odo still hung up on their fight a few days ago and assumes their relationship is over. But Kira assures him that simply because they fought, and she still thinks she is right, doesn't mean that they are broken up and that she doesn't love him anymore. She just they spend their last night together doing something special. The other senior officers, along with Liam, Garrick, and Jake, prepare to leave as well. Captain Cisco leaves Dax in charge of the station. Dax and Worf, after discussing the difficulties they can face in having children, share a loving embrace. Dax says she wishes she could go with them, but Worf says that she'll be with him as she is always in his heart. The Obsidian assumes tactical information with the other ships in the fleet, and together they set a course for Cardassia. The combined fleet arrive at Chintoka, and the Jem'Hadar inflict heavy losses on the Klingons with suicide runs of their ships. Despite this, Martok orders the fleet to fire on the weapon platforms. However, only a few are taken out before they become active. Gear discovers that none of the platforms has a power generator, meaning they must all have a central source. Captain Cisco orders it found and destroyed. Aboard Deep Space Nine, Dr. Bashir informs Dax while they walk together on the promenade that his efforts to enable Dax and Worf to have children have worked better than expected, and Dax should have no problems getting pregnant. Dax couldn't be happier about what the doctor tells her and decides to go to the Bajoran shrine. Skira earlier asked the prophets to help her and Worf have children, to thank them. She goes and kneels before the orb of contemplation, before she can say thank you to what she still believes to be wormhole aliens. The countess go out and Dukat appears in the temple behind her. As Dax reaches for a phaser, he suddenly picks her up with an energy field wave and then drops her body on the ground. He then effortlessly reaches through the force field and opens the orb, upon which the Pal Wraith transfers from his body into the orb, causing it to turn black. Outside the station, the wormhole opens and then seals itself. At the same time as the wormhole collapses, Captain Cisco suddenly feels a jolt and senses that something is very wrong. He says that the prophets tried to reach out to him. Kira's alerted but stays calm. Just as O'Brien has found the platform's generator on a small asteroidal moon on one of the two planets of the system, Jake is forced to help his father to his quarters as Cisco seems unable to maintain himself. Kira then assumes command of the Defiant. On DS9, after the Pal Wraith has left Dukat's body, Dukat kneels in front of Jadzia's body. Before beaming out, he touches her head gently and says that, for whatever it's worth, he never meant her any harm. Flanked by an Excelsior-class ship and a bird of prey, the Defiant attacks a generator but is unable to penetrate its shields. Chief O'Brien causes the weapon platforms to fire their own source by imprinting a fake Federation warp signature on the asteroid. His plan works, and the platforms lose all power. The Alliance destroys the platforms and proceeds to take the system as General Marduk immediately orders ground troops onto both planets in the system. But the joy quickly evaporates when the Defiant receives a Priority 1 message from Bashir on Deep Space Nine. On Cardassia, Bayuna's fear is that not only the Jitoka system has been overrun by the Federation, but also the wormholes vanished along with any hope of bringing reinforcements from the Gamma Quadrant. Ducat is not worried at all, seeing that both Cisco and the Bajorans have not been cut off from their gods. Perhaps, however, without the prophets, he reassures Bayuna and Damar. Cisco simply just another Starfleet captain. He guarantees that this outcome will help the Dominion a great deal. The Defiant returns to DS9 and as soon as it docks, Worf rushes to the infirmary. Cisco is told by a little girl that all the orbs have gone black. She asks Cisco to find the prophets and bring them back. With the many Bajorans watching, Cisco promises to try. Everyone heads into the infirmary, where Odo and Quark are already waiting anxiously. Dr. Bashir emerges from surgery and sadly informs everyone, though he managed to save the Dex symbiote, which needs to be returned to Tro as quickly as possible. Nothing can be done for Jadzia. Everyone is stunned. As Cisco looks on, Worf and Jadzia share their final words, and she regrets that the two will never now have children. Jadzia touches Worf's face as she takes her last breath. She says that their baby would have been beautiful. Worf howls in the Klingon tradition until his spirits know that Jadzia is on her way to Stovall. However, as Trust Captain Cisco can do nothing but watch and gently caress her face. Later, Captain Cisco speaks to Jadzia as she lies in her coffin. He tells her that while Curzon was his mentor, she has been his friend and that he is going to miss her. He regrets not having listened to the prophets and gone on the mission. He blames himself for her death, saying that maybe if he had listened to the prophets, she would likely be alive now. It seems that the prophets have abandoned the Bajorans and him. He calls out to her, telling her that he needs her guidance now more than ever. He needs to know how to make it right again, so he failed both as the emissary and, for the first time in his life, he also failed in his duty as a Starfleet officer. He tells her that he has to get his head together again and think, but also knows he needs to get away from the station. Cisco decides to take an extended leave of absence and says farewell to his crew and ops. When asked by Dr. Bashir when he plans to return, he replies that he doesn't know. He thanks all of his friends for everything, and then he and Jake take off for Earth. Easy. Hey, what are you doing? Sorry, I thought my cat was about to eat something. Anyway. Entering Cisco's office, Karen notices that the captain is taking his cherished baseball with him, indicating that he doesn't know if he'll ever return to the station again. On Earth, Cisco scrubs clams at his father's restaurant, deep in thought about what has happened and the uncertain future that lies ahead. Wow. Man. So anyway, let's take some notes about Jadzia Dax from this episode. This episode marks the death of Jadzia Dax, and thus the departure of Terry Farrell from the series. Ira Bear never wanted to kill Dax at all, and later stated, quote, "I didn't want to kill Jadzia. To me, that had very little to do with good storytelling," end quote. After the fact, Bear also related Bear also read to Farrell she had consequently broken his heart a little bit. Terry likewise didn't want her character of Jadzia Dax to be killed off. Very much wanting to proceed into the 7th season, she felt heartbroken by her conclusion that she had to leave. Some of the reasons as she felt she needed to go were because she kept being dismissed instead of listened to by the producers and was frustrated. One of them even told her that, if she didn't sign the contract to appear in season 7, she'd be working at Kmart instead. An incident she referred to as the last straw for me. Carrie McCluggage, the former chairman of Paramount Television Group, noted, quote, "I remember distinctly, one meeting where she came to my office and was crying, and she said that I just want out," end quote. Farrell herself commented, quote, "My heart said it was time to move on. After playing the character for 6 years, there's things I wish we would have done. I wish I would have had at least one fight scene this year, but there's 9 major characters, so the writers can only do so much. I've had 6 years and 150 episodes of experience on this show, so my sadness is more in saying goodbye to the people. I do feel cheated out of the character in the same way as I would have if the show had been cancelled, because I've got the opportunity to play her." End quote. The staff writers were shocked and in disbelief by Terry Farrell's departure. Ron D. Moore stated, quote, "She's definitely coming back. I don't care what they're saying, I just refuse to believe it." End quote. One of the reasons why the writing staff felt this way was because the Jackson Wharf storyline was a major success. However, it was generally agreed that the writers had little choice but to kill her character. The rest of the cast were also highly surprised by Terry Farrell's decision to leave. End quote. "I can't imagine that anybody wanted her to go away." End quote. Renee Auberjonois noted. "She was good." Michael Dorn was saddened by Farrell's departure too. He remarked, quote, "Only people involved know the facts. We just know what people want to tell us." End quote. Of her death scene, Farrell said, quote, "It was really hard because my eyes wouldn't stop tearing, and it was very hard to, every time I morphed as a guttural scream, water would splurt out of my eyes. I didn't think that on my close-up he made the sound because it was too hard. That was very difficult." End quote. Although Farrell never appeared in the series again, she did reprise roles she had seen in the video game Deep Space Nine: The Fallen in 2000. Jadzia was seen again in her Worf's wedding picture, an image of the Santa Penumbra, but not during the retrospective in What You Leave Behind. And now let's take a look at a deleted scene from this episode. A scene deleted from the episode saw Cisco, Worf, Garrick, and O'Brien selecting a Cardassian target to attack. The Torque system was the first to be suggested by Worf, as it was closest system along the border of Cardassia Prime. However, it was also the most heavily fortified. One advantage of this fact was that the Dominion would never expect attack there, but the disadvantage was that the element of surprise might not last long, resulting in heavy casualties. The Vitani system was the second target chosen by Garrick, because Vitani II was the birthplace of Tred Clean, the father of the Cardassian Empire. Garrick suggested that such a loss of sacred ground would be devastating to the Cardassians and a great propaganda victory. Disadvantages of this target were that the system had little strategic value, and it's also had no effect on the Jem'Hadar. O'Brien finally chose the Shintoka system because he had noticed that sensor scans with warp signatures for the Dominion fleet stationed there were slightly different and almost too synchronized in the previous scans, suggesting that they were fake signatures. And now let's take a look at some production notes from this episode. This is the 150th episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This episode features the last chronological appearance of the second generation TNG uniforms, first seen in TNG Evolution, and Command Red, is worn by two officers present during the briefing room scene. Two officers later appear wearing Star Trek Next Generation Operations Gold uniforms in a establishing shot of Starfleet headquarters in the Voyager episode Pathfinder, because this shot was recycled from Homefront. William T. Riker and Deanna Troi later appear in TNG uniforms in the Star Trek Enterprise series finale, These Are the Voyages. Although that episode took place in 2370, more than 4 years before the events of Tears of the Prophets. The Blue Federation flag that graces Jax's coffin was later reused in the Enterprise episode in Weird Dragon Part 2 in the USS Defiance briefing room. While this episode concluded filming, Renee Auberjonois was overjoyed to be finished shooting his scenes as Odo for the time being. While Ira Stephen Bear was walking down to the set, Auberjonois was coming out of the soundstage. He ripped off his mask, which Bear described as sweaty, disgusting, and gave it to Bear, telling him to give the mask as a souvenir. Much to Auberjonois' amusement, Bear later said the gesture seemed as Auberjonois was telling him to take the actor's pain. The Bear was causing Auberjonois to suffer. Bear subsequently had the mask mounted in his library inside his living room and vowed to keep it forever. And now finally, let's take a look at some continuity from this episode. The title for this episode is derived from lines spoken in Emissary, the series pilot. When presenting Cisco with an orb for the first time, Kaya Paka describes it as the tear of the prophet. It's unclear why, when Cisco was removed from the bridge of the Defiant, Kira took command of the ship and not Worf. You have seen in various episodes, as explicitly stated Apocalypse Rising, that Worf, as a Starfleet officer, is the XO of the Defiant, while Kira, as part of the Bajoran militia, is second in command of Deep Space Nine. In addition, the Bajorans had a non-aggression pact with the Dominion. The rounding were indicated in a contemporary AOL chat that the Bajorans were combatants in the war by this point. Also, it says for work to remain at the tactical station. This episode confirms what is alluded to in The Reckoning, that the Dominion have not attempted to bring any reinforcements into the Alpha Quadrant since their fleet was destroyed by the Prophets and Sacrifice of Angels. This episode features the first battle of Shintoka. Martok's forecast about the victorious end of the war in 1 year ties the fact that the writers expected Deep Space Nine to last 1 more year, making a total of 7 seasons, and their intention to end the series with the end of the war and victory by the Federation, Klingon Defense Forces, and Romulan Star Empire. The Gratitude Festival was first seen in the 3rd season episode Fascination. Bashir Kirk's reaction to news that Dax and Worf are going to trade for a baby recalls their conversation change of heart, and they both realize that they are still in love with her. This episode represents the first time we have seen the real Damar and Mayun since statistical probabilities. Both are seen as hallucinations of Waltz, and both were seen as holograms in The Pale Moonlight. Mayun was also seen as a hologram in Inquisition. This also marks the first appearance of the Dominion headquarters at Cardassia, which will become a major location throughout the 7th season. Michelle Horn, who played Sagi, later appears at Penumbra. In the scene where the USS Defiant and the USS Hood began firing around the moon where the power generators are located, the registry number on the front of the Defiant is seen NCC 74210, the registry number of the USS Valiant. Dukat is still using the Federation shuttle he procured from the USS Honshu and Waltz. Though his beam into the Bajoran temple on DS9 is accompanied by transporter effects, audio, and visual. This episode is the last time we see Dukat in military uniform. He's seen wearing civilian clothing in every subsequent appearance for the rest of the series. So, as the finale to season 6, this episode is just really, really damn emotional and just heartbreaking. And yeah, well, there is a bit of victory here. It comes with a bit of personal defeat. So yeah. So overall, I give Tears of the Prophets 5 warp cores out of 5. Well, thank you all so much for joining me at Star Trektember 2025. Hope you enjoyed this look at Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 6. And next year, we'll be looking at the 7th and final season of the show, with the first episode of Deep Space Nine Season 7, Image in the Sand. And anyway, so, of course, next month is going to be Horror Month 2025, and that month we're going to be taking a look at the Candyman movies, so that should be interesting. So, yeah. So, until next year, live long and prosper, everybody.